Program best practices in working with preliminary EO and PS-VTW candidates. My name is Poonan Bedi. I'm a consultant with the CTC, and I will be facilitating this session. And let me start off by introducing our presenters. So first we have Gitasto. So, excuse me, I seem to have misplaced my, here we go. Thank you for your patience. So Gitasto started out teaching in the classroom, being an intervention specialist, and moved into coaching new teachers through the BITSA program. When she became the induction coordinator, she had the privilege of creating a wonderful induction program for San Jose Unified School District. She's very passionate about supporting new teachers and working with them to navigate the world of teaching and learning. So we're excited to have her on board. Next, I'd like to introduce Karen Sacramento. Karen Sacramento has worked at the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing in the Professional Services Division since 2001 as an education consultant in teacher preparation, program evaluation, and research, with a focus on teacher induction program policy and standards. Prior to joining the Commission, Karen was a teacher, counselor, administrator, and intern program manager in the Bay Area. Next, I will introduce Tanya Alameda. She's the Director of New Teacher Induction at the Center for Teacher Innovation for Riverside County Office of Education. She and her team have used technology to transform professional learning engagement and access for teachers around the globe. Tanya holds a master's degree in educational technology and is leading edge certified in online and blended curriculum development. She previously served as administrator of online learning for the Center for Teacher Innovation and is currently an online adjunct professor for Badman University. She's passionate about helping educators create joy and success in teaching and learning through meaningful technology integration. All right, next, Carrie, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hello, I am Carrie Morgan. I'm a coordinator with the San Diego County Office of Education. I work in the Teacher Effectiveness and Preparation Department. So I work with our induction program, as well as a designated subjects program and a few other teaching credential programs we have, along with CSET Prep. I see lots of familiar names in this room, so I'm excited to be representing San Diego and our county and our partners with help with our EO candidates this year and in the future too.
Thank you. And then Beth, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Beth Roybal, and I work as a new teacher support specialist at the Salinas Union High School District, where I also taught middle school English for many years. I also was on the development team that redeveloped the Cal TPA, and I continue to serve there as a lead assessor for English. I'm also on the staff at CSUMB as adjunct lecturer, and I think that's it.
Thank you. And as a reminder to all our participants, if you could please drop your questions into the chat during the presentation, we will be addressing your questions at the end. There will be time. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to our presenters.
Thank you, Poonam, and good afternoon and welcome to the Best Practices session. This session will provide information on how teacher induction programs are supporting those candidates who have joined their teacher induction program but have remaining requirements to complete from their preliminary program. As Poonam said, I'm Karen Sacramento from the CTC, and I am honored today to be joined by teacher induction program leaders from across the state and across programs of differing size and structure, and our expert panel that we have with us today. We are all experiencing this unprecedented time, and the breadth and depth, strength of teacher induction in supporting our newest teachers in California has never been more evident, as programs have folded in candidates who would have completed their preliminary program under normal circumstances, but were not able to do so due to the current pandemic crisis. The Commission has taken a number of actions to address that, initially in April of 2020. to provide flexibilities for credential holders, applicants, candidates, and program completers impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic for the academic year 2019-20. An executive order followed that in May 2020 that moved the requirements for candidates to pass a performance assessment and the RICA from the preliminary credential to the clear credential for teachers completing programs at the end of the 2019-20 academic year. As the school year started with the pandemic still in place, there have been a number of actions taken to provide additional ongoing flexibility, to provide ongoing flexibilities and options for applicants and candidates for this current year, 2021. This includes, in September, the governor signed Senate Bill 820, which extended by 1 additional year those temporary flexibilities that had been adopted in the executive order. And as with our current flexibilities, they enable candidates to complete specified exams and assessments at later stages in the credentialing process within induction so that they can enter the classrooms and begin teaching on schedule. So thank you for joining us. I will turn it over now to the panel of program leaders for some best practice guidance and insights around serving candidates within these areas.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tanya Almeida, and I am the director of the Center for Teacher Innovation at Riverside County Office of Education. And I am joined with my partner in this work, Beth Roybal. Beth was a partner, one of our partnering agencies for several years, and always has really positive, important feedback for our program improvement. And when we were faced with this challenge of increasing our TPA and RICA expertise into how to support our candidates, we were just very fortunate to be able to partner with Beth in this work. So I'm going to start us out to share some of the practices we have in place. We don't by any means have this all figured out. We have started some support pieces, and we will be taking a look at what we call our mid-year review at how it's going and make adjustments ongoing. But we wanted to just share a few things that we think are working well and as we continue to improve them. So Riverside County, we have a really large program. So this year we are supporting 80 districts throughout the state, 7 county offices, 116 charter schools, 18 private schools, and 3 special state schools. So we have 224 partnering agencies across the state. Our enrollment this year, we have 2,673 candidates. 407 of those are on executive order preliminary credentials. 2 of those candidates are on variable term waivers. We have 1,547 coaches that support our candidates as reflective coaches. So as I mentioned, we were super lucky to be supported by our leadership in recognizing this need to extend our team's expertise. We do have a handful of folks on our team that do teach at the university level and are familiar with TPA. We didn't have anybody on staff that was especially an expert in RICA, so we were able to bring on Beth for her night job, one of her night jobs, to help us support candidates and coaches. And then we were also really fortunate to bring on Autumn Clark from San Jacinto and Nikki Ueda from LA Unified, LAUSD, who has also served as a reflective coach with us for many years. So we were able to extend our staff through temporary contract management employees and to be able to feel like we were equipped to support these candidates in these new areas. So before I share some of the practices, I wanted to just get an idea of everybody in the room. It looks like we have about 124 people in our room to get an idea of how you are feeling about what you have in place right now currently to support your executive order and variable term waiver candidates. So you see on your screen that if you go up to your view options, you should be able to click out of here. You should be able to click annotate. Let me go back. view options, click annotate, and then you should be able to select stamp. So if you view options, annotate, and select a stamp, it could be a heart, a star, a check mark, whatever you choose. And then on the next slide, I'm going to ask you to place your stamp on a word that best captures how you're feeling about what you currently have in place to support these candidates. If we go to the next slide, you see one indicator already in place. A couple more appearing. I see optimistic, cheerful, glum, at ease, blessed, pleasant, apprehensive, secure, calm, timid, proud, energized, content, some uneasy, some worried, some restless. So our hope is that by the end of our time here together this afternoon, that if you're on that left side of that mood meter, that we have shared some resources that might help move you over into that right side where you're feeling a little more at ease, and anything that we can do to support you following this session, we'll be sure to share our contact information as well. So thank you for sharing your affective response with how you're feeling about these candidates. And we'll go ahead and clear that screen. All right, thank you. All right, so as I mentioned, one of the first things that we decided to invest in was staff to support these new requirements, and using temporary contract management employees to be able to do that. We also recognized, not right away, but after our TCME staff came on board, that there were a handful of us that were connecting with these new staff members, and oftentimes there could be confusion in the different messaging. And so to streamline that support, we have a person on our staff that has taken the lead to be the point person of our new TCME staff members that are supporting these candidates. So Dr. Melissa Metz-Hall, I think, is in our room, and she is serving as our point person leading the oversight of the work of our TCMEs in these areas. Another thing that we did right away was our Credential Services team verified every credential applicant and the credential of every applicant, and made sure that if there was a credential code that indicated outstanding statutory requirement of RICA or TPA, that they were captured on a master list. And so I'm just going to show this really quick. I put a copy, this is blank, of course. I just made a copy of how we organized this information. And so we just captured their enrollment date, their agency, what was their enrollment status, are they year 1, year 2 ECO, credential name, meaning are they on the executive order, do they have a variable term waiver. We also made sure that, I don't know, I can scroll over here, I can't see all of my screen, but we have an area over here where it says credential notes. And so for TPA, Beth has been reaching out to all 407 TPA or candidates, or they might not all have TPA, some have RICA. But Beth and Autumn and Nikki have been reaching out to those candidates personally, kind of getting an idea of their story. What do they have going on? What would make most sense for them to be working on right now? And what can wait? Taking notes over in the side about where that candidate is and what they might be working on, if they have a projected test date, those kinds of things. So in one place, we just have a complete list of all of our candidates so we don't lose track of them. We have a learning management system that our candidates engage in as well, but we just wanted to pull those candidates out and make sure that we have a list of every one of them, and we are keeping track of the touch points for these candidates to make sure we can help them be successful. So that was one thing our credentialing team did. The other thing that we did is we created some resources within our user interface. One of the questions that comes up a lot is, well, how did you change the ILP? And we didn't. So I'm just going to share that with you now. What goes in the ILP for these candidates has changed, but the actual structure of the form did not. So this is our learning management system. And if I go to my ILP over here, this is just a test candidate. So you'll see a lot of blanks, but you'll see the structure. So we still have these candidates indicate when they plan to meet with their coach regularly. Up here at the top of their ILP, they watch a quick introduction video. So they're required to do that. They attend an orientation. They also attend a special meeting just for these candidates that have these outstanding orientation or requirements. And Beth has been facilitating those, and Melissa as well has been joining those meetings. For the IDP, we have the candidates submit a link to their IDP right here in their ILP if they have it. If they don't, then we ask them to reflect on what were their strengths and areas of improvement from when they left off, if they were in student teaching. We still have these candidates do an initial CSTP self-assessment, get an idea of where they think they are. We have them meet with their site administrator, and they indicate the date of that meeting. They formulate a professional growth goal just like any other candidate, but their goal is going to be about, most likely, if they have determined that they're ready for this, they will indicate their professional growth goal in correlation to their outstanding requirement. And there may be some people that aren't ready for that, and that's okay too. Then their personal timeline, they just indicate here which inquiries they're going to work on. So again, this is just a sample account, but you'll notice that that third one down there is completing your teacher performance assessment. And we also will have one for RICA. So I'm going to go over here. Well, let me finish this real quick and I'll switch back out to that. I want to show you the resources that are available there. But as far as the ILP, then they also still capture their observations. They're still engaging in observations as well. And then we use what we call an inquiry organizer, and it's just a simple questions based off of some work of Rick Stiggins and inquiry. And so we just ask the candidates to think about, in regards to what you are working on, where are you now, where are you going, and how are you going to close that gap? So for our TPA or RICA candidates, they're thinking about what kind of prep they're doing and practice preparation that they're doing in those areas, and they just reflect on that here. So it's just a way to organize their thinking. We don't ever give a reference to length or brevity here. Some people can type that up in one sentence, some people will type on and on. So it's up to whatever they need just to organize their thinking. Then they would be submitting evidence of their application. So if they said this is what they're going to do, what have they actually done? The evidence here for our TPA and RICA candidates does not require passing of either of those assessments to have this inquiry considered as complete. It could just be complete practice and prep for it, and they have a test date. So they can complete their inquiry requirements and their induction requirements without actually having a passing score to submit as evidence. They'll reflect on where they are. And so that is the structure of the inquiry that we ask them to continue to engage in. So our other candidates, of course, are picking some of these other topics like you see right here, like teacher wellness or strengthening classroom management. They have about 50 different topics to pick from where they create their own. But for these candidates, we're hoping that we're going to help them really think about and plan to pass those outstanding requirements. So the last thing I want to show you before I turn it over to Beth is the focus cycles of inquiry. So as I mentioned, we have over 50 topics that candidates can select from, or they can choose to create their own that's aligned to a district or site initiative. But over here with CSTP 6, developing as a professional educator, they can come over here to completing their TPA, and they have a quick, probably less than 5-minute tutorial that gives them some information that Beth created. So you can hear Beth sharing information there. And then this link right here takes you to curated resources that Beth has created that gives candidates steps to success with their Cal TPA or their Ed TPA. So for example, here, I'm just going to click real quick to give you an idea of what's captured there. So kind of step-by-step helping to guide them through of what they want to make sure that they are focusing on if they're planning to submit and hopefully pass those outstanding assessments. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to, go back to the slide deck here, I'm going to turn it over to Beth to share some more of the details about the specific support that she's providing.
Great. Thank you. So, and I'll keep, Tanya did a great job of really going through most of the kinds of supports that we're providing. But the one thing that I think, no matter what size your program, no matter how complicated your induction program cycle is, the number one thing that I have found in meeting with the candidates who need to complete the TPA, and some of them have to do both the TPA and RECA, is that reassurance. The reassurance that, first of all, they have time. There is actually they have as long as they have through their preliminary credential expiration date to get the TPA done. Now, do they really want to wait that full 5 years? No. But just for many of them, the knowledge that they do have time just takes that edge off and allows them sort of, clears that affective filter and allows them to really start thinking about, well, how can I plan for this in a stepwise fashion that will help me move forward and get it done. The other thing that I found is really important is initial needs assessment. And what we've done, because we have so many people in our program who need this, they're probably, as Tanya indicated, there are over 400 people who need the TPA or the RECA or both. And probably about 60 to 70% of those need the TPA. And so that's a lot of out of that 400. In order to get some baseline information, we've put together just a really quick Google form that I email out to them right away with questions such as, what program did you work, were you involved in during your teacher preparation? And also, was it Ed TPA or Cal TPA? We don't have anybody using the Fresno system FAST, and my understanding is everybody within that group actually was able to complete and pass the FAST. So between those two TPA options, and then did they pull together information and submit already or not? Or are they planning to start all over from scratch? Perhaps many of them were able to use their materials that they accumulated last year during their teacher preparation program, and they just need some support trying to make sure that it's going to be appropriate and all for the TPA. So that initial needs assessment lets us know what specific types of help they are going to need. That's been, I think, probably one of the most important pieces, is that everybody's story is so individual, so different. And so in order to help them move forward, it's really important to understand the details of their own personal situation. Tanya already talked about the flow sheets, or what we call the steps for success, that give a quick chart out of the steps they need in order to complete the TPA. It also has, at the end of the steps, a list of resources. We're offering within CTI resources such as, the steps for success. We do a monthly seminar on an introduction to the TPA that coaches and other participants in induction are also welcome to attend. But there are also resources through the CTC and through the Ed TPA folks that candidates have access to directly, especially in light of the executive order and the PS-VTW. There's been a growing recognition on the parts of the CTC and Ed TPA that they need to connect directly with candidates in some cases. And so those are also within that document. The other thing that we've tried, and we're not quite sure yet how it's going, is the idea of a peer support group. We've cohorted candidates in terms of Cal TPA Cycle 1, Cal TPA Cycle 2, and then our Ed TPA folks all together in different groups. And we meet with them twice a month on a drop-in basis, whoever wants to come in. and ask questions. Others are welcome to stay on during that hour and listen for answers, to share ideas with each other. We're still in the process of ramping that up, as most candidates are just kind of they either really knew what they needed to do and they're just finishing off and submitting, or they're really at the beginning stages of trying to figure out what it is they need to do. And so I'm expected to see that peer support group will grow after winter break. And the other thing that's really important, I think, is to involve the coaches and mentor as much as possible in the process. One thing I really appreciated about CTI's approach is they didn't want to dump all of this onto the coach or mentor as an extra task for them to do. And that turned out to be a really wise move, especially given the fact that all of our coaches are really struggling themselves with the whole distance learning environment and are very much feeling like first year teachers again. And so the ability to really to involve them as much or as little as they're able to participate has been really useful. We do a weekly office hour as well, and coaches, candidates are both welcome to drop in, to set up appointment times with me to talk about where they're at or where their candidate's at. Ideally, it's great initially for an initial meeting after the needs assessment if I can meet with both the coach and the mentor together, and then that way the coach has a better understanding of what the mentor needs to do and can find out ways to help them move forward, even if they don't know everything about TPAs, which is usually the case. And so those are just the basic strategies in addition to the big systems that Tanya described that are set up to really help our TPA candidates. But reassurance is critical. Knowing what they need is critical to get started in any case. And I think at that point, it is time to turn it over to our next presenter.
Hello, everyone. That is me. So Carrie Morgan with SDCOE. We have a smaller consortium in San Diego County and a little bit statewide, working with our districts and our charters and our privates. And I think what'll help, if you guys know first that our communication structure is that San Diego County is the induction program. And then we have what we call our district leads that run the program within their districts or their schools. And then we have San Diego County leads that help as well. So keeping that in mind, we are mindful, kind of like in this room, everybody's induction program, we might all have the same standards, but we all run them just a little different. That goes with the vibes of our schools or of our context. And so I kind of took this as just a simple way to get started. If you are a mentor, or who knows, maybe if there's even a candidate in the room, you may want to ask if you have a lead or a coordinator, what they're doing about this rather than taking it on yourself right away. Just kind of go through your program structure too. But what we did is when I kind of wrote it out like notes, because I can remember attending this in the past, it was sometimes hard to write everything down. So hopefully I wrote it all down for you. You guys can just access this later. But we collected the information on our executive order candidates. All the information in A was what we gathered. And then what I do is we have an EO Google folder, and each candidate is where as they complete the evidence of the TPA or the RICA, and they're sending me scores, I'm just adding it to there. And then on my spreadsheet, I'm just linking it right to it. So when I'm ready to make recommends later, it's all right there for me. But it's just real simple, just all that general info. And then if they need the TPA or if they need the RICA. And honestly, when I first asked that, I didn't think anyone had passed it yet. And then I got 5 people telling me, well, it might be on my credential, but I already passed it. And I was like, oh, this is great. So then I just changed my survey to add, I already passed the TPA, and started gathering that information right away as well. So then we take this information and we shared it with the candidate, the mentor, and the, I'm calling them the induction liaison. It's those leads that I was telling you about, because we just wanted everyone to be in the same loop, not necessarily put it on the mentor to talk with the candidate or the candidate to bring it up. We just wanted this general info out there for all of them so everybody could see what was needed. And then based off of that, under 2A, 1, 2, 3, these were the talking points that really just started the conversation. What type of support are they already receiving? Do they know who to talk to? IHE is Institute of Higher Learning, their college or their university. And then do they already have a timeline or a plan? It's pretty awesome when the candidate's like, oh, I got this. This is what I'm doing. This is what I have. We have those. So why not let them take that lead and then just bring all of that into the ILP as they're moving along? They might not be, we're not, in their ILP, it's, how do I say this? We're not having them complete the TPA or anything like that in their ILP. It's whatever they're already doing in their ILP should naturally be occurring if they have to cycle 1 or cycle 2 to be completed. So it's almost like when you have a district goal and then the candidate wants to choose a different goal and you're like, hey, how about you work with your district goal and let's do all this together. It's kind of like that with the TPA. That's what I think of it as. So anyways, this info is just that good old baseline to get the conversation started to see where everybody's at. And then you can go ahead and switch to the second slide for me. Perfect. And then this is how we think of them as our good old flexible tiered support. Because you just have the range. You just have the range of candidates and what they need. I always think of our tier 1 as just the person who they're good to go. You just really need to get out of their way. They have this handled. So you just may need to, make sure they're communicating, following their own timeline, but you're right alongside there with them. And then the tier 2, I think this is more the population that we have. They have some support from their IHE that's continuing, but they're teaching and they're new and they're in their district and they kind of have a lot going on. So you're right alongside there with them. Really hopefully this is the triad where you're actually in communication with the college as well. How can you support them with observations, with the videotaping, with feedback? I hope my biggest hope is that tier 2 is really a triad kind of support with that college and university still involved. And then tier 3, and we do have these as well, they're out of their preliminary program and they're not looking back. So how do we really, really, really support these guys? Because there isn't support from the IHE. What can we do for them really understanding the TPA and the process they need to go through? They did get some of it at their IHE. You really can't leave a program without having some understanding of the TPA. It's just, to me, it comes down to personality sometimes and that little bit of overwhelmed or anxiety that creeps in there. So for all these candidates, what we have done is at the very bottom right, go back, the bottom right where it says all TPA supports and then RECA supports. It's a link that'll take you to a Google Doc that I have, which is what I provide for our regional support in the county as well. And guess what? I get them from the PSD, from the CTC as well, because it's a great resource for those of us that are in there using it. And I just go through every Friday and update the links as needed and send them back out to my groups. But this is useful for everybody in the room to see what's already out there. You don't really need to reinvent anything. You just need to know where your candidates are at and then how to move them along. And the same with the RECA too. But I'm looking at the time and I want to make sure that my next person has enough time to go as well. So that's all for me.
Hello, good afternoon now. So my name is Gita Stowe and I'm the induction coordinator for San Jose Unified, which is a single district program, but we have 41 schools in our district. And currently we're serving 130 teachers in induction and 15 either need RECA or TPA, or a couple of them need both. And so when we created the induction program special for them, it was very similar to the current program that we had. We just made a few adjustments and a little bit of tweaks so that we could help them go to the next one. Great. Could you click the next part? There you go. Thank you. So there are 3 components to the induction program. In general, we call it the regular program. And then there's also the TPA induction and the RECA induction. And it's reflective documents is the biggest component. And instead of having our TPA or RECA teachers doing the current ILP. It's more focused on, if they are RECA, it's called a RECA support tool, and it's just focusing more on their domains, on what they need at this time. And it's just a help, it's a reflection and a pacing guide throughout the whole year that they use. And for the TPA teachers, they have a TPA support tool. So it's more focused on what they need and what things that are directly linked to their TPA. And they all have, everybody has a coach, and coaches weekly or just-in-time support. They do coaching cycles with them, which is what they consist of: observations, debriefs, planning for coaching, coach sometimes models. And those still happen for the TPA and the RECA teachers, just however they need that support. And then the professional development, as some of my colleagues said, about all those resources. So that is part of their professional development for RECA or TPA, just whatever support that they need in that area. But how we started the year was, because we're kind of a smaller program, I had individual interviews with each of the teachers to see where are they, where do they need to go. And then they went through the whole orientation videos. We had induction support WebEx meetings for them. And from there, the group, it was my TPA group that first decided that they wanted to meet monthly. So we created monthly study groups for TPA and for RECA. And what they do is, the teachers that are studying for the RECA, we come together and they talk about resources they found useful or areas that they need to work on, just to ask their peers for extra support. And also, we just had 2 teachers pass the RECA, which was very exciting, because they came to the support study group and they talked about how they passed it, like what they did during the actual test to kind of help pace themselves, and gave suggestions on resources that they used that helped them. And then in the TPA group, majority of my teachers already passed cycle 1, and so they're on cycle 2. So we're meeting together and they registered, they're keeping each other on track. We're looking at the rubric components, we're looking at different areas and giving each other feedback and information on how to do the videos and all those things. And then one big thing was the permission slips. So I went to our district and I got permission slips for the teachers that they're using with the students, because it used to be through the university, but now they're through the district. So we have our own permission slips. And so, yeah, and we're going to keep those study groups going throughout the year. And it just, the topic shifts at each one of the groups, depending on what it is that they're working on, what it is they need. And in the spring, when my group of cycle 2 TPA teachers have started writing on their reflective documents for the TPA, before they submit, we're going to be getting together a couple times and having peer reviews so they can get feedback on perhaps how they did their videos or how they did their writing. So that'll be exciting. And I told them we're all building this together. So however we build this program for this year and what works and what doesn't work, we'll look at it together, and then we'll continue for the future, as long as we need to bring in TPA and RECA teachers. So I'm going to pass it over to Karen Sacramento, who's going to say a few more words.
Thank you to each of you for what you shared. As I listened and heard themes, certainly around assessing initial needs and collecting information based on where the candidates are at and what they need and what they are experiencing, and sharing that information with those that need to know, district leads, mentors, candidates themselves, really involving a community of support for candidates, and finding or creating or connecting to resources. It was mentioned that the Commission has a number of resources. They're all on the teacher induction page at ctc.ca.gov. A number of programs have provided supports. Tulare County, San Diego County around RECA, and then the Commission itself around a number of performance assessment supports. We have office hours, so really pay attention to that PSDE news. Just 2 things I want to highlight, and I know we need to go to Q&A, but it was mentioned that these candidates have the gift of time, and I think that's really important, that right now we are focusing on what needs to be focused on and how they're walking in their world. Very likely that just-in-time support to teach the students that they're teaching within the current demands that they are working in. They have 2 years in induction, and they have 5 years on their credential. As I believe Beth said, we don't expect them to take 5 years, but they do have time, and they don't need to do everything at once. That reassurance that Beth and Tanya talked about, I think, is really important. Also, that passing the TPA or the RECA is not the ILP goal. That would need to be met in order to meet the standard 5 requirements for a credential recommendation, but rather the support and the resources and the process and the path around those ILP activities that are tied to the TPA, that measures the TPEs, that are the CSTPs. It's very related to what they are doing anyways, and the support and mentoring that induction programs have been doing all along. That's the goal, and that's built into their CSTP-based goals. So thank you. A couple of my reflective thoughts, and Poonam, I think we can open it up to any Q&A that may be in the room for the last few minutes.
Absolutely. Just in monitoring the chat, we have a very self-sufficient participant group here. So any of the questions that have come in on, accessing the mood meter or the master spreadsheet have been taken care of. So thank you to Jessica and Cherise for dropping in those links. And there was a recent question about the Beth's Steps to Success document. So Beth will add in the links after the presentation. So, okay, we have one question that just came in. The question is, and it's from Jen, how do we recommend them once they are done with either TPA or RECA?
You will recommend them through an attached process on the recommend that you do. So once they have completed their induction requirements, you will have an opportunity to show their exam results, and that will be attached online to the recommend itself. So for those that have recommended candidates with additional requirements, maybe at specialist candidates who have additional content requirements, or out of state or out of country candidates, it will be the same process. It will be like an additional attachment to that credential recommend that you do for that candidate.
Perfect. Okay, we have another question came in from Colleen. For clarification, should we modify the ILP for TPA/RECA needs or not modify it? TPA/RECA needs should just be intertwined?
I would say that would be the ideal. So understanding what the candidate needs and then how that can fit into the CSTP. I've said over time that the CSTP is malleable, it's flexible, and the TPA measures the TPEs. And those are the 6 domains. As Mary said this morning, it's the same DNA. So looking at their CSTP goals and seeing how these are all things that the candidates are doing in the classroom. These are, the natural harvest of their classroom experiences. These are creating lessons. These are assessing students, designing instruction, designing learning experiences. So how do they fit into those CSTP domains and then feed into the ILP so that it's not a standalone outside, that it's just a natural part of their teaching experience as the teacher of record. What would not be a part of their ILP is passing that exam, because that in itself is a summative measure. The supports around that and the activities that they would be doing to move towards finishing those requirements, those would be the activities within the ILP. Other questions? I think maybe we lost Poonam. She had to go to her next session. So
Can I respond to something in the chat? This is Beth.
Yes, please do.
Somebody mentioned that it's possible these candidates do not actually have an induction experience. I would say that's not quite the case. Induction, really the core of induction is all about documenting beginning teachers' incremental growth. And so as they're completing their TPA or RECA, they are doing exactly that. So you might be capturing different evidence that you would normally be doing, but they are still having an actual induction experience.
Any other questions? You can feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. You can just unmute yourself, I believe, as well. This PowerPoint will be on the, if it's not already, I believe it is already actually for this one, in the folder for this session. This and all of the breakouts are recorded, so you'll have access to this afterwards. But again, we'd be glad to take for a few minutes any questions. I think we have 2 more minutes here. All right. Well, if not, we thank you very much for being here. Thank you to our presenters and for actually the documents and the information that you shared. And thank you to all of you for supporting candidates during this time, those and those that have additional requirements, helping them continue to move through those as well. And we will move on to the next session. You have a 10-minute break and we have one final session, and then we'll be coming back together for our closing time. Thank you.